Hello, welcome to Inside Politics, where we delve into the pressing political issues shaping our world today. I'm Anastasia Lavrina. As the 2024 UN Climate Change Conference COP29 approaches, the global community is turning their attention to this crucial event to be held in Baku city, the capital of Azerbaijan. This is a pivotal opportunity for the countries to accelerate action to tackle the climate crisis. However, some major powers prefer to manipulate climate discussions to serve their own interests. In today's episode, we shine a spotlight on the intensifying anti-Azerbaijan campaign as we approach COP29. Are we witnessing a strategic geopolitical maneuver, or is it a legitimate critique of Azerbaijan's environmental policy? Joining me now from the UK is the former British ambassador to Azerbaijan, James Sharp. Welcome to Inside Politics.
You're welcome. Always a pleasure. And I know that this is a really important time for Azerbaijan with COP29 just around the corner.
Thank you so much for joining our discussion. So how did the global reaction to climate initiatives evolve from COP28 to COP29? What key events or outcomes influence this shift in focus?
Well, I think COP29 is obviously a very big thing for Azerbaijan. And the focus on climate change and the COPs has been increasing in recent years. We know that as well from the British perspective, because we hosted COP26 in Glasgow in 2021. And since then, of course, we've seen more and more global warming. We've seen a huge number of unnatural weather events, including recently in Azerbaijan and Baku, I know, incredibly heavy rainfall. And that was also repeated across Europe, Southern Europe and Central Europe in the last month or two. So it's really becoming clearer and clearer to people that the weather is changing rapidly, and therefore the focus on doing something about it, I think, is the pressure is rising equally rapidly. And so COP29 is sort of the latest chance to actually really tackle climate change.
James, why do you think the South Caucasus region became a focal point in discussions about climate change and ecological abuses?
I think that there are a variety of issues that Azerbaijan needs to think about for COP29, and the whole world needs to think about for COP29. There's been some progress in recent years on talking about the phasing down or the phasing out of fossil fuels or coal and unabated coal and things like that, which is very, very important steps on the road to removing fossil fuels from the energy chain, for example. For Azerbaijan, I think this year, one of the key questions, of course, is finance. All of the adaptation, all of the sort of the emissions reduction that needs to take place needs to be financed. And a lot of countries around the world will struggle to provide that money. So there's something, you're probably aware, something called the new collective quantified goal, which is the big target for Azerbaijan at COP29, securing additional financing to help the world reduce emissions and adapt to climate change. And that's not going to be easy. There's a huge number of complex issues to be addressed at COP29, but climate change, climate financing is right up there at the top. And traditionally that's been something for the developed world to provide. But I think the question now is really, is that enough? And there's a real sense in a lot of countries that actually it needs to be more of a collective effort. And countries like China, for example, which are by far the largest emitter of greenhouse gases, should be contributing to financing for the developing world. And of course, oil and gas producers, maybe the Gulf states, and of course Azerbaijan should also be providing finance for this new goal. So I think that's going to be the big test for Azerbaijan, whether or not it can bring all of these very different approaches and different countries together to come up with this new financing goal.
Well, there has been a noticeable surge in anti-Azerbaijan propaganda in some Western media as COP29 approach. It seems that the major powers manipulate climate discussions to serve their own interests, particularly regarding ecological abuses in the South Caucasus. Your opinion on this issue?
Well, I would say that these big climate negotiations are always very political. Because as I say, it costs a lot of money to actually deal with them, and that's always an issue for all countries. And so, some of the big issues, of course, are always between the United States and China. And I think that as long as if they can come to agreement, then we'll have some sort of agreement. If they can't come to agreement, I think the wider point that you're making about I think related to the attacks on Azerbaijan. Again, hosting big events like this always invites criticism. The World Cup in Qatar, for example, there was a lot of Western media criticism of Qatar for human rights and the treatment of construction workers, for example. There was criticism of Abu Dhabi last year as being a big oil and gas producer. And the chair last year was I think he was the chief executive of ADNOC, the main Emirates oil and gas company. So that's to be expected. And I think that Azerbaijan is signing up to be host and chair of the process has to recognise that. And I think that, but I think I have seen a lot of criticism for various things, and it kind of feels to me, number one, it's a bit unfortunate that then distracts attention from what are the key issues, which are to sort out, climate change, to sort out financing goals and various other complex issues. So that distracts attention from that, then that's a problem, I think. But hopefully now everyone will be focusing on the actual climate negotiations themselves at COP29, and all of that will fall away.
Well, it's one thing to talk about Azerbaijan as a country known for its oil and gas policy, and quite another when political issues related to the post-conflict development in the region are touched upon. Although it will be more useful to focus on the agenda of the conference itself and the need to form a common approach to achieving the results.
Yeah, no, I mean, I very much agree. But I mean, I would, as I say in quite a lot of interviews, I prefer to look forward rather than look back if possible. And I think that, having the chairmanship and hosting the negotiations, I think is an opportunity as well as a challenge. And the opportunity, it seems to me, is to draw attention of the world to regional issues. And I know that Azerbaijan and the region are suffering from climate change with a reduced rainfall, for example, and water shortages. And this is a chance to sort of look at the whole, not just the South Caucasus, but the Caspian and the Central Asian region, and actually sort of point out, these are the issues. How can the world come together to actually help? And then how can you use COP and Azerbaijan's chairmanship and the focus on the region to address those regional questions? And amongst them, of course, is the fact that some of the rivers, the main rivers in Azerbaijan, the Kura and the Araks, come from other countries. I mean, originally from Turkey and then through Georgia and Armenia. And I think that's kind of like, the countries of the region have a shared interest. And it kind of feels to me that one of the legacies for COP29 has to be to get the countries of the region to focus in a sort of a technical, non-political way on how to actually deal with water resources, how to deal with climate change in the region for the common good, if you like. And I think that, I noted that one of the initiatives that the Azerbaijani government came up with was, I think, a Baku Dialogue on Climate and Water. And I think that seems to me a perfect vehicle for then, after COP29, a perfect vehicle for the legacy of COP29 to then have those regional discussions about how do we collectively deal with the collective problems, the common problems that we have with reduced rainfall and water resources.
Two more important issues to be added, as I think. First one, Armenia backed Azerbaijan's COP hosting, and Azerbaijan has officially invited Armenia to attend COP29 Global Climate Summit. And the second issue is that Baku offered all fighting parties worldwide to lay down their arms while country leaders and diplomats discuss climate policy.
Yes, I think that the first point you made was a very positive one, and I hope that it does mean that Armenia participates fully in COP29. But let's see how that goes. I mean, on the other issue, I mean, I do believe that this is a great opportunity to for all the sides just to really sit down and have those kind of technical discussions and get technical experts together as well. And that's one way of avoiding politicization, is just look at it from a technical perspective.
James, what can other countries learn from Azerbaijan's experience regarding how to navigate hostile narratives in the context of international diplomacy and climate discussions?
Well, I mean, as I said, countries that host big events like this just have to live with it, quite frankly. I mean, if I was giving media and comms advice to the government, I would say that you have to look at what are the likely attacks that are going to come, the likely criticism that will come, and how do you actually then sort of try to get rid of that before the event. Azerbaijan is an oil and gas producer. There's nothing you can do about that. I mean, you are an oil and gas producer. So, but I think that one of the things I would recommend is that Azerbaijan should then show leadership in terms of okay, our nationally determined contribution, our goal for emissions reductions up to 2030 and 2035, is, we're going to strengthen that. We are going to have a net zero target by 2050 or 2060, which a lot of other countries are doing, and which is what is required, I think, according to the UN, to stop climate change. So showing that sort of leadership and come out with a very coherent medium to long-term plan about what steps Azerbaijan will take to decarbonize the economy, in terms of transport, in terms of energy production. I know they've started on the renewables energy, solar plants and wind plants. So again, have a very clear plan about what the future holds. So actually, to show, yes, we're an oil and gas producer now, but we have a plan to reduce our carbon emissions over the next 5, 10, 15 years, for example. That would be a very, very clear sense of leadership. Another one, of course, would be to show in terms of financing. Again, I know that the government has launched this initiative, the Climate Finance Action Fund, which is a good. I think it's a good start as a way of actually getting oil producers to contribute. So again, Azerbaijan showing what its contribution is up front and announcing a sizable donation to that, I think would be a very positive step. In terms of Armenia, it's not only in Azerbaijan's hands, but the question is, on the various issues, the peace treaty, the border delimitation, and the sort of transport links. The question there to me is whether Azerbaijan could actually take some steps unilaterally to show goodwill, maybe make some concessions, to show that actually Azerbaijan is committed to good relationship with Armenia and committed to actually making progress on all of these questions.
So can we say that COP29 is a good opportunity for Baku and Yerevan to engage in dialogue and collaboration to achieve the desired peace agreement?
Well, I personally don't link the two. I know that a lot of people want to see signature of a peace agreement before or during COP29, but my personal view is that if you're going to do a peace treaty, you have to do it properly, and it has to be durable and sustainable, quite frankly, and not rushed. I think that's the risk, is that you come up with an imperfect one, then it doesn't necessarily help the future. So I think the two sides just need to keep working through the issues quite honestly and come to some common agreement on what that means.
James, thank you so much for being with us today. You watched Inside Politics. Stay with us and see you in the next edition.